Walter got away before I could get a pick from him.
15 love.
That's the first time anyone's gotten away from you without you getting a pick out of them.
Well, he escaped.
So Pam Shriver has won the first point of this women's singles final.
And now the second point. It's 30 love.
I think a lot's going to depend on that big first serve of hers.
That's what we're depending on. That's pretty impressive, Virginia.
She served that wide serve to the right foot very effectively against Martina in the semifinals.
As you watch the progress of this match and the rest that is to come, you'll have to get used to that noise. We are in the takeoff pattern from nearby LaGuardia Airport, and it's a factor that the players have to consider as well.
14-15.
She looked a little stiff on that ball. She may be a little edgy at the beginning of a match like this. When you're nervous, your legs don't move so well.
She is the youngest player ever to get this far in a major championship. Pam Shriver, the 16-year-old, has been most impressive both with ability and composure throughout this tournament. And if you watch that first game, she still is. Chris Evert on the left, Shriver on the right.
Seems to me that that's just exactly what Chris would like to have happen right now, is to rally a little bit, get some feel. She's the one that's going to improve as she gets loosened up and really gets the groove. So I would think that Pam would be better off rushing her just as quickly as possible.
I agree. I thought there was a classic Chris Evert point. She likes to get her opponent pinned into the backhand corner, and they'll eventually get tempted up to come into the net, usually at Chris's request, and then she can lob or pass them. And I think that if one must think objectively about this, I think that Pam has to get in as early as possible to have a chance in rallies like this.
40 love.
Maybe coming in behind a first serve is not ever going to work, I don't think. Chris's serve is very adequate. It's better than it used to be, and the first serve comes through fast. Chris has played solidly right through the tournament, but I don't think she's ever felt totally happy with her game on this faster surface. I think everybody's probably struggled a little bit.
That'll make it 1-all. As you said, Virginia, that was a more typical Chris Evert game.
Yeah, I think she's going to be trying to keep Pam back as much as she can and then pass it. Chris loves to make passing shots. She can thread a needle with the accuracy of her passing shots.
I'm sure it's obvious to everybody by now that the racket that Pam is using is bigger than the racket that Chris is using. How do you feel about that?
You know, I think the interesting thing is I think it definitely gives you more space to hit volleys with. I think it's a good racket. People say they have a little trouble with this. So Pam doesn't seem to have any trouble with the serve or the overhead. But I think that the main thing about it is that when you're not used to playing against it, the ball comes off the racket slightly differently from the other rackets. So it takes you a little while to adjust. I think it absorbs a little speed and then comes faster to you.
She is 6 feet, but not quite tall enough for that.
You know, Pat, I think that so much has to do with the person holding onto the leather part of the racket, no matter what shape it is or how tightly or loosely it's strung.
Or how big it is.
Right. The sweet spot's still in the middle.
I agree. I think people are too conscious of the different types of rackets. I think basically this great passing shot from Chris. I think Chris said she was a little more nervous playing against Tracy Austin previous times than she was against Pam, and I think the reason is that against somebody who rushes the net, she feels so confident with her passing shots that she doesn't get afraid of them.
This is double break point for Chris Evert.
In methodical fashion, Chris Evert leads Pam Shriver. The CBS Sports Spectacular presents next week the Cup and the record makers. Affirmed, Aladar, and Seattle Slew all are expected to run in the Cup. It'll be telecast live from Belmont Park here in New York next week, and need more be said. Also, as part of that, the record makers.
You take your seats, please.
Weightlifting, a match or an event that was taped earlier in Las Vegas. All that on the Sports Spectacular next week. Congratulations to Billie Jean King, who has just joined us.
Thank you.
Mixed doubles champion, as well as a member of the women's doubles championship team of yesterday with Martina. Billy, you've been down there playing earlier today. How much, in effect, how much did the airplanes bother you?
It's not so much the airplanes as much as the wind that keeps changing directions all the time. And the court slants quite a bit, so it's difficult sometimes to know whether the ball's going to land in or not. You're running downhill or uphill depending upon where you hit the ball to.
Billy, have you played Pam Shriver?
No, I've never played, Pam. Virginia, have you played?
No, I haven't played her either, and it's amazing you get very little chance of watching some of these players. They get on into the top so fast you can hardly study them. The strange thing about the wind on the stadium court is that it seems to blow in the opposite direction on the court from the flags at the top of the arena.
That's when a left court doesn't help you out. It actually helps Chris have time to get set on her forehand drive and, of course, hit it down Pam's backhand line. That's what champions are made of. They hit liners.
Game, Evert. 3 games to 1.
Well, the airplane gets by. Pam had said yesterday that she would not feel any pressure, that she didn't think she'd be nervous. Billy, you've been there so many times. She said that.
I'm still nervous at 34.
Don Candy, her coach, was saying, I've been talking to him all through the tournament, and he had such a nice big smile on his face. He said that she felt that against Martina, she played just as well as Martina at times, and so she reckoned that Chris and Martina were much the same class of play, and so she really hoped that she could produce that same stuff today. But I think she is very much afraid of Chris's reputation and her game.
I would think you have to be.
Just a little tyke, 6 foot tall, weighs about 140. I asked her before the match because everyone says she's 5'11". That was probably 2 years ago when she was only 14.
I have to believe she's going to grow some more.
That last serve wide is probably the serve she should serve at least 60 to 75% of the times to Chris, to get Chris off the court, so her first volley doesn't have to be that good to have a chance to win the point.
Games are now 3-2. Back to the actions down below on the stadium court. Pam Shriver on the right, Chris Evert on the left. Point.
Pam's going to find out what kind of shape she's in, because Chris will just keep running you side to side and up and back. Whew. Deep breath from Pam Shriver. Chris Evert, I was talking to her in the dressing room when she was warming up, doing stretch exercises with Connie Spooner, our WTA trainer. And she said the one thing she's going to have to concentrate on today is getting her first serve in. I thought that second serve was long.
Well, I think Chris Evert's first serve has, as she says, become one of her weapons now. Before she used to think in terms of just getting into play. But I think her second serve, like most of our second serves, isn't as, can be attacked.
Chris feels if she doesn't get her first serve in, that Pam is going to follow that second serve to net. There's Colette Evert right there in the middle with the sunglasses. Chris said earlier that she would like to win this for her daddy, Jimmy Evert, whose birthday was yesterday. So happy birthday, Jimmy Evert, down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Pretty good string.
She's still a youngster, too.
Yeah, you're inclined to forget about that sometimes.
30.
Made a great impact in the U.S. Open when she was 16.
Yes, we all had to play her.
Game Evert
4-2 Evert.
leads 4 games to 2.
Pam likes to talk to herself. Tells herself what to do, tells herself to concentrate, and she rushed that last particular point.
She seems to have a good temperament, though. She gets, I see her, like now she looks at the planes, but then she seems to forget about them once they're over. And her concentration seems to be good.
There's the point where she's going to to serve wide to Chris's forehand, get Chris off the court. Wonderful angle on that backhand volley. She undercuts it.
She has a nice long reach, too.
I'll say.
And a nice big racket.
15 all.
That was just wide. So it's 15 all.
The ball held up there quite a long time. And Chris is going to make her run and run and run. I think that was the correct thing to try. She just rushed herself a little. You tend to rush against Chris Evert because she's so good and puts you under such pressure. When you finally see a high volley there, you get so excited that sometimes you do rush yourself.
I think she took her eye off it because she saw Chris going to exactly where she'd aimed the ball. Chris has always been the master of anticipation, or the mistress of anticipation.
30 all.
That time, Pam Shriver swerved the ball into Chris Everett's body, so Chris couldn't get away from the ball. Inside pitch in baseball.
That's a good serve.
40-30.
Chris is going to need a step ladder to get to that one. Bounces so high because Pam Shriver's so tall.
Deuce. Advantage, Shriver. First service. Ball to left.
A lot of people in the crowd didn't hear it hit the net.
That was a lot of smoke behind that serve.
We'll be back with more of the U.S. Open Tennis Championships
Okay.
after here in a minute. Evert on the right, Shriver on the left.
Chris Evert showing Pam Shriver its new balls.
Take your seat.
They change every 7 and 9 games.
Pam Shriver's going to have to come up with a good game to break back. She's dropped her serve on her second service game at 1-all. And that's, if Chris can hold on to her serve, that was just what she needed, an early break.
No, 15.
Chris just missed that passing shot. I think the new balls might just help Pam a little bit. They have a tendency to get extremely light on the surface. You don't have too much control over them.
15 all.
She had said she would not change her style of play against Chris. She'd do what she thinks she can do best.
She's got such a good volley that I think that's the right thing to do. The only thing is that Chris can make the court feel awfully big behind you and be